Hey everyone, Dr. Chem here, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are going on a seriously fascinating journey. We're going to dive right into a masterclass on one of the absolute most powerful analytical techniques in modern science, gas chromatography. But look, we're not just going to sit here and read textbook definitions. No, instead, we're going to metaphorically shrink ourselves down and actually trace the physical journey of a single sample, right from the split second it's injected into the instrument all the way to the final digital readout. We'll find out exactly how we separate and identify the completely invisible chemical world all around us. So let's dive into this with a real-world scenario that literally affects every single one of us. Food safety. Imagine you've got an apple. It looks totally clean, perfectly shiny. But how do we know for sure? Well, in China, the State Administration for Market Regulation rolled out this incredibly stringent standard. It's called GB 23200.113 2018. Basically, this protocol demands that scientists simultaneously screen plant-derived foods, like our shiny apple, for 208 different pesticides and their metabolites. I mean, we are talking about finding microscopic needles in a wildly complex chemical haystack. How in the world is that even physically possible? Well, the answer is hiding right inside the gas chromatograph.
To get there, here's our visual roadmap for today's masterclass. We'll start with 1. Principles of gas chromatography. Then, 2. Injections and carrier gases. 3. The separation race, columns. 4. Temperature control and detectors. 5. Reading the chromatograph. And finally, 6. Real-world applications.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Principles of Gas Chromatography. Before we can even think about analyzing those 208 pesticides, we really need to nail down what chromatography actually is. The absolute crucial takeaway here is that all chromatography relies on a fundamental competition between two different phases. In gas chromatography, our sample is first vaporized into a gas. It's then pushed forward by a flowing, totally inert gas, which we appropriately call the mobile phase. But here's the catch. It doesn't just flow through an empty tube. The inside of that tube is lined with a highly specialized material called the stationary phase. So as our vaporized molecules travel, they interact with this coating. Some molecules just breeze right past it, totally unbothered, while others are chemically attracted to it and slow down. That difference in travel time? That is exactly how we untangle a complex mixture into individual readable components. Moving right along to Section 2, Injections and Carrier Gases. Okay, now that we've got the basic theory of this chemical competition down, let's check out the actual physical instrumentation. The pipeline of this machine is essentially a 4-step journey. First up, the sample is injected and instantly flash vaporized into a gas. Second, the carrier gas sweeps up this vapor cloud and transports it deeper into the system. Third, the mixture enters the column, which is safely tucked inside a highly controlled oven, and this is where the magic of separation actually happens. Finally, the separated molecules exit the column one by one and hit a detector, which then translates their physical presence into a digital electronic signal. Let's zoom in on that very first step for a second, the injection. You can't just casually dump a sample into this machine. It requires absolute pinpoint precision. We actually have a few different modes depending on what we're looking at. For instance, if we've got a highly concentrated sample, say greater than 0.1%, we use what's called split mode. In this setup, only a tiny fraction of the vapor actually enters the column, and the rest is vented away so we don't totally overwhelm the system. But remember our apple? We're hunting for incredibly faint trace pesticide residues, meaning our concentrations are well below 0.001%. So for this, we use splitless mode. The vent stays closed for a specific window of time, sweeping the entire tiny sample into the column. We literally can't afford to lose a single precious molecule. Once our sample is vaporized, it needs a ride. Enter the von Dimter curve. This is basically the ultimate cheat sheet for choosing a carrier gas. It maps out the speed of the gas against the efficiency of the separation. Now, historically, helium was the absolute go-to. It's safe, it's efficient, it's great. But as you probably know, helium is a non-renewable resource, and massive global shortages have made it ridiculously expensive. If we look at the data trends here, you can see exactly why modern labs are aggressively pivoting to hydrogen. Hydrogen actually delivers higher separation efficiency at much faster gas velocities. So you get high-quality data and you get it faster. You just have to make sure the lab strictly manages hydrogen's flammability risk, and you're golden. Let's jump into Section 3, the separation race, focusing on columns. So our sample is a gas, and our carrier gas is pushing it forward. We are now entering the absolute heart of the gas chromatograph. This is the arena where the actual separation goes down, the column. I want you to think of the column kind of like a microscopic racetrack, but it's an obstacle course, not a straight sprint. Broadly speaking, we have two types of tracks: Packed columns are, well, exactly what they sound like, packed full of solid particles coated in the stationary phase. They are extremely rugged and can handle 10 to 50 times more sample volume. That makes them awesome for bulk industrial gas analysis. But for our tricky apple pesticides, no way. We need a capillary column. These are ultra-narrow, hollow, open tubes made of fused silica. And get this, they can be up to 60 meters long. Since the stationary phase is just a microscopic film on the inner wall and the path is wide open, it gives us incredibly sharp, high-resolution separations. It's the only way to untangle those 208 distinct pesticides. All right, moving to Section 4, Temperature Control and Detectors. We've got our column, sure, but how do we control the pace of this massive microscopic race? Well, the entire column is coiled up inside an exceptionally precise oven. If all the chemicals in our mixture had similar boiling points, we might run the oven isothermally, which simply means keeping the temperature constant from start to finish. But our apple extract is a wild, unpredictable mix. Some compounds boil super easily, while others need intense, heavy heat. If we keep the temperature low, those heavy chemicals will literally take hours to exit. If we start high, the light chemicals will all fly out at once in a completely unreadable clump. The game-changing solution here is temperature-programmed analysis. We start it cool to gently tease apart the highly volatile compounds, and then we slowly, methodically ramp up the heat. This gently coaxed out the heavier, stubborn compounds without wasting precious hours in the lab. As those perfectly separated molecules finally cross the finish line and exit the hot column, they smash into the detector. There are a few key players here. The Flame Ionization Detector, or FID, is incredible for organic compounds. It literally burns the molecules in a tiny hydrogen flame to generate a readable electrical current. Then there's the Thermal Conductivity Detector, or TCD, which is a great, rugged, general-purpose detector for basic gases. But for our hyper-complex pesticide standard, we absolutely need the ultimate identifier, the mass spectrometer. It doesn't just tap us on the shoulder and say, hey, a molecule is here. It tells us exactly what that molecule is by analyzing its fundamental mass and structural makeup. Okay, I want to pause real quick for a dose of everyday lab reality. Gas chromatographers are incredibly sophisticated, highly sensitive instruments, which means things go wrong. Baselines drift, peaks get smeared into oblivion, signals just drop out entirely. The golden rule of troubleshooting, which is perfectly hit on the head by the Shimadzu guide, is to check the obvious first. Is the syringe physically blocked? Is the carrier gas actually turned on at the tank? Did the temperature program load right? And here is the absolute most important part. When you're fixing it, you must change only one variable at a time. If you change 3 things at once, you'll literally never know which tweak actually solved the problem. Now on to Section 5, reading the chromatogram. So once the instrument has done its job flawlessly, the physical chemistry ends and the data analysis begins. The output we get is a graph known as a chromatogram. You'll generally see a flat baseline with sharp peaks spiking out of it. To make sense of this, you really just need to focus on 2 things. First is retention time. Literally the exact minute and second a peak exits the column. If you're running a standardized method, that specific retention time acts as a qualitative fingerprint to tell you exactly what the substance is. The second crucial metric is the peak area. The actual mathematical area under that curve tells you precisely how much of that substance is in there. But when we hook up a mass spectrometer to our GC, man, we unlock a whole new, deeper layer of data called a mass spectrum. Take a look at this data for the chemical chlordane. Inside the MS, the molecule is aggressively bombarded by an electron beam set to exactly 70 electron volts. This violent impact literally shatters the molecule into a unique pattern of fragment ions. And because 70 electron volts is a strictly established universal standard, it shatters organic molecules in a completely reproducible way, every single time. We can take this unique visual fingerprint, run it against a massive global digital library, and confirm with absolute 100% certainty that this exact specific pesticide is present on our apple. So we know what it is. Now to figure out the exact quantity, scientists build what's called a calibration curve. Check out these numbers for a pesticide called acetochlor. By injecting very specifically known, controlled amounts of the pesticide into a completely blank apple extract, the instrument records the corresponding peak areas. So, 10 micrograms per liter gives us an area of roughly 2,500. Jump to 300 micrograms and we get an area of nearly 78,000. By plotting these data points, we effectively build a perfectly linear mathematical ruler.
Then, when we run our unknown, potentially contaminated apple sample, the software just looks at the peak area, aligns it with our ruler, and mathematically back calculates the exact concentration of pesticides sitting on that fruit.
And honestly, this right here brilliantly illustrates the sheer, mind-blowing power of modern quantitative analysis using GCMS. Following that Chinese GB standard method with a proper matrix match calibration curve, the limit of quantification for these pesticides is less than 10 micrograms per kilogram. Let that sink in. That is an astonishingly tiny amount. It essentially means the instrument is sensitive enough to detect less than 10 parts per billion of toxic residue hiding out in a really messy, complex food matrix. It's the ultimate safeguard ensuring the food reaching your kitchen table is undeniably safe. Which brings us to our final section, Part 6, Real-World Applications. Let's step back from the micro-level data for a second and look at the macro-level impact. Gas chromatography is, without a doubt, the invisible workhorse of the modern analytical world. Beyond ensuring food safety and dealing with rapid quetrous extractions, it's a massive player in forensic science. Suspected arson? Investigators rely heavily on GCMS to literally sniff out microscopic fire accelerants hidden in the debris. In environmental chemistry, it's out there tracking volatile organic pollutants hiding in our drinking water and our soil. And in the massive energy sector, GC relies on those robust packed columns and flame ionization detectors to unravel massively complex hydrocarbons in fuel research. It is everywhere. And that wraps up our masterclass. From a flash vaporized injection and a ridiculously fast hydrogen-powered carrier gas, zooming through a 60-meter capillary obstacle course, right down to a 70 electron-volt molecular shattering, gas chromatography truly is a masterpiece of applied physics and chemistry. So the next time you take a big bite out of a crisp apple, or pump gas into your car, or even just pour a glass of tap water, ask yourself, how much do we unknowingly rely on this invisible chemical race to guarantee the safety, purity, and quality of our entire modern world? Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Chem, on The Explainer. Keep questioning the invisible world around you, and I'll catch you next time.